I didn't expect anything about that summer to change me. I was 24, freshly graduated, emotionally untethered, and crashing on my best friend's couch while I waited for my real life to start. Her parents' house sat just outside the city, the kind of place people moved to when they wanted quiet, privacy, and distance from mistakes they didn't talk about anymore. I arrived with one suitcase, a laptop, and a plan that consisted entirely of figure it out later. Her mother answered the door. I had met her once before, years earlier, in passing. I remembered her as polite, distant, unremarkable, but memory is unreliable, especially when time sharpens things you weren't ready to notice before. She stood there barefoot on cool tile, linen dress loose at the shoulders, hair pulled back like she hadn't decided yet whether the day deserved effort. She smiled at me, not wide, not forced, just enough to acknowledge my presence without inviting anything else. "You must be tired," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, older than mine, steadier. I nodded, suddenly aware of how loud my own breathing felt. That should have been the moment my brain classified her as off-limits and moved on. Instead, something in me paused, the way you pause when a sentence ends differently than you expected. The house smelled like citrus cleaner and warm wood. Sunlight filtered in through tall windows, landing across her forearms as she picked up my suitcase without asking. I noticed her hands first, confident, unhesitating, the kind of hands that had lived a full life without apology. I followed her down the hall, telling myself this was nothing, just nerves, just exhaustion, just the discomfort of being a guest. But when she glanced back at me and asked, "How long are you staying?" I didn't answer right away. "Just the summer," I said finally. She nodded once, like she'd already calculated what that meant. The first week passed quietly. My friend was busy. Work, errands, a life that didn't revolve around me the way it used to. I spent mornings applying for jobs, afternoons pretending not to spiral, evenings making myself small in a house that wasn't mine. Her mother was everywhere and nowhere at once. She moved through the space with quiet authority, never rushed, never hesitant. She cooked without recipes, cleaned without complaint, spoke only when necessary. When she did speak to me, it was practical, neutral. "How do you take your coffee? Did you eat? The guest room gets hot after noon." Nothing personal, nothing inviting. And yet, I found myself timing my steps to hers, listening for her presence without meaning to, adjusting my posture when she entered a room, like my body knew something my mind refused to name. It wasn't desire. I told myself that every day. It was awareness, curiosity, a misplaced sense of gravity. I noticed the way her mouth tightened when my friend mentioned her father, the way she stayed outside longer than necessary when phone calls came, the way she watched the pool at night like she was guarding memories instead of water. One afternoon, I caught her sitting alone on the back steps, sunglasses on, untouched glass of iced tea sweating beside her. I should have gone inside. Instead, I asked, "Do you mind if I sit?" She hesitated, just a fraction, then nodded. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was heavy, deliberate. "You're quiet," she said eventually. "So are you." She smiled at that, not amused, appreciative. "That's intentional," she replied. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. The first line crossed itself 2 days later. I was in the kitchen late, barefoot, rummaging for something sweet I didn't need. She entered without announcement, hair damp, sweater slipping off one shoulder. "You'll wake everyone," she said gently. I wasn't trying to. "I know." She moved closer, reaching past me for a glass. Her arm brushed mine, brief, unremarkable, except my entire body reacted like it had been waiting for permission. I stepped back too quickly. She noticed. Her eyes lifted to mine, sharp and assessing, the way adults look when they sense something forming that shouldn't. "Okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said immediately. Too immediately. She didn't call me out. She didn't step away. She simply took her glass and leaned against the counter, studying me like a problem she hadn't decided to solve. You don't have to be nervous here. I'm not. This time she smiled, smaller, sadder. People who aren't nervous don't answer that fast. The air changed, not dramatically, subtly, like a room after someone closes a door you didn't realize was open. I left first. That night I lay awake replaying the moment with forensic precision, what I felt, what I imagined, what I refused to admit. I wasn't attracted to her. I was reacting to attention, to stability, to adulthood. That was the story I told myself. It didn't survive the next morning. The pool became our shared territory. Early hours when my friend slept in and the world hadn't started demanding things yet. She swam slow, deliberate laps. I sat nearby pretending to read. We didn't talk much, but silence, when mutual, becomes intimate. One morning she stopped at the edge, resting her arms on the stone. Water beaded on her skin. She looked up at me, unguarded for once. "You don't belong here," she said quietly. I stiffened. "I know." "That's not what I meant." She studied my face like she was reading something between expressions, something I hadn't meant to reveal. "You're waiting," she continued, "to find permission or escape. I can't tell which." I swallowed. "Does it matter?" Her answer came too fast. "Yes." That should have ended it. That should have been the boundary. Instead, it was the first time I realized she wasn't unaware. She was choosing restraint. And restraint, I would learn, can be far more dangerous than temptation. By the end of the week, the guilt arrived. Not about her, about my friend. I started avoiding shared spaces when she was home, started cutting conversations short, started carrying a secret that hadn't technically happened, which somehow made it heavier. One night, my friend laughed about a childhood memory, leaning into her mother's side like nothing had ever broken between them. I watched from across the room, chest tight, understanding something awful and undeniable. I wasn't just developing feelings, I was trespassing. And the worst part, her mother knew. She didn't stop it, she didn't encourage it, she simply watched me, the way someone watches a fire they're not sure they should put out. And that summer was only beginning. By the second week, avoidance became impossible. Not because we were alone more, but because we were aware more. Awareness changes everything. It sharpens the edges of ordinary moments until they cut. I started waking earlier, not to see her, but to avoid her. I lingered longer in my room, pretended deadlines existed, stretched simple tasks into reasons not to be present. It didn't work. She had a way of appearing without trying, not seeking attention, not retreating either. She treated me the same. That was the hardest part. No lingering looks, no softening of her voice, no accidental touches. If anything, she became more careful, more controlled, like she was actively holding something back, and that restraint made my thoughts louder. One afternoon, my friend left to run errands. The house settled into that deep midday quiet where even sounds feel intrusive. I was at the dining table, laptop open, pretending to work. She walked in with a stack of folded laundry and stopped when she saw me. "I'll come back," she said. "You don't have to," I replied. She hesitated, then placed the laundry down anyway, keeping her distance. "You've been tense," she said. "I'm fine." She looked at me for a long moment, then calmly, "That's the second time today you've said that." I didn't answer. She moved closer, not into my space, just near enough to be present. I could smell soap on her skin, clean, familiar, domestic in a way that felt dangerous. "You don't owe me explanations," she continued, "but you are allowed to take up space here." Something about that broke through me. "I don't want to cause problems," I said quietly. Her brows knit. What kind of problems? The honest answer sat heavy on my tongue. I didn't give it voice. I'm just a guest. She tilted her head slightly. You're a person first. That should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like permission I wasn't asking for. That night, guilt took on a new shape. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, constant, the kind that lives in your chest and reminds you of itself at the worst moments. My friend talked about a date she was excited for, oblivious. She teased me about my lack of romantic life, nudging my arm with playful familiarity. I laughed, I nodded, I played my part. Her mother watched from across the room, face neutral, eyes thoughtful. Later, as I washed dishes to feel useful, she joined me at the sink. We stood side by side without touching. I raised her to trust people, she said, suddenly. I froze. I hope, she continued evenly, that trust is deserved. My throat tightened. It is. She didn't look at me. She didn't accuse. She didn't soften. I believe you, she said. The words felt heavier than suspicion ever could. The following days were marked by near misses. A shared laugh cut short, a conversation interrupted, a glance that lingered a second too long before discipline reclaimed it. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The faint scar near her wrist, the way she paused before answering personal questions, the quiet tension in her shoulders when my friend hugged her unexpectedly. This wasn't a woman unaware of boundaries. This was a woman who had learned the cost of crossing them, which made my feelings feel reckless, immature, inconvenient. One evening, I found her in the garden after sunset, sitting on the edge of the stone path, shoes kicked aside. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally, like someone carrying something heavy without complaint. I didn't mean to intrude, I said. She gestured for me to sit anyway. We didn't speak for a while. The air was warm, crickets filled the silence. Do you ever regret the life you chose? I asked quietly. She turned to me surprised. That's a big question. I know. She considered it carefully. I regret moments, not choices. What's the difference? Moments are emotional. Choices are intentional. I absorbed that. And you? She asked. Do you regret where you are? I hesitated. I regret not knowing what I want. Her gaze softened, just slightly. That's not regret. That's growth. The word lingered between us, charged. The line finally shifted on a night I didn't expect. My friend didn't come home, a last-minute overnight trip, a casual text. The house settled into unfamiliar emptiness. I was on the couch when the power flickered, then went out completely. She emerged from the hallway, phone light illuminating her face. Storm knocked it out, she said. Should be back by morning. The quiet felt different without electricity, more exposed. We sat in the living room with candles lit, far apart at first. Conversation drifted, neutral topics, safe ground. But silence kept returning, heavier each time. You've been carrying something, she said eventually. So have I. She didn't deny it. I won't cross a line, she said calmly. Not with you, not with anyone connected to my daughter. I nodded, relief and disappointment colliding. But, she continued, eyes steady on mine, pretending nothing exists doesn't make it disappear. My breath caught. I don't expect anything from you, she said. I just need honesty, from both of us. I stared at the candle flame, heart racing. I don't want to feel this, I admitted. I know. The gentleness in her voice undid me more than desire ever could. She stood first. We should get some sleep. She was right. But when she turned to leave, she paused, not looking back. For what it's worth, you haven't imagined this. And then she walked away. I didn't sleep, because acknowledgement changes everything. Not desire, not action, recognition. By morning, I understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't a crush. This wasn't confusion. This was the beginning of a choice neither of us had made yet. And choices, unlike feelings, demand consequences. The shift didn't happen all at once. It came quietly, disguised as routine. Breakfasts where we avoided eye contact, afternoons where we timed our movements around each other, evenings where conversations stayed deliberately shallow, like we were afraid that anything deeper might crack something we couldn't repair. My friend noticed before either of us admitted it. "You two okay?" she asked one morning, glancing between us with a casual curiosity that made my stomach tighten. "We're fine," her mother replied evenly. I nodded too quickly. My friend shrugged it off, but the seed had been planted. From then on, I felt watched, not suspiciously, but observantly, as if the house itself had become aware of a shift it didn't understand yet. The guilt returned, sharper this time, not because of what had happened, because of what hadn't, and how much effort it was taking to keep it that way. I started leaving the house more. Long walks, coffee shops, anything that gave me space to breathe without calculating where she was or what she might be thinking. But distance didn't quiet my mind, it amplified it. I thought about the way she spoke, measured, intentional, never careless, about how she carried responsibility without resentment, about the loneliness I'd glimpsed not in her words, but in the pauses between them. This wasn't attraction built on fantasy, it was recognition, and that terrified me. The breaking point arrived disguised as kindness. My friend invited people over, coworkers, neighbors, laughter spilling into rooms that had been too quiet lately. Music played, wine flowed, the house felt alive again. Her mother moved through the gathering effortlessly, gracious, composed, exactly who she was supposed to be. I watched from the edges, aware of how easily she fit into the role everyone expected of her. At some point, I slipped outside, needing air. She followed a few minutes later. "You disappeared," she said. I needed space. "So did I," she replied. We stood apart in the dim light, the sound of voices muffled behind us. "You can't keep running," she said calmly. "I'm not running." She looked at me, not accusing, not disappointed. "Then you're hiding," she said. The honesty of it stunned me. "From what?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was lower. "From yourself." I crossed my arms, defensive. "This isn't fair." "You're right," she said. "It isn't." Silence stretched. "I don't want to hurt her," I said finally. Her face softened, not with relief, but with understanding. "Neither do I." That was the first time she'd included herself in the equation. After that night, avoidance stopped being possible. We were too aware of each other's awareness. It showed in small things, the way she lingered before speaking to me, the way I held back responses that wanted to spill out, the way the air between us seemed to hold meaning we never voiced. One afternoon, my friend left early for work. The house was quiet again, but this time the quiet didn't feel neutral. I was in the kitchen when she entered, phone in hand, expression tense. "She called," she said. "Who?" "My sister." Something in her tone made me set my mug down. She asked if I was okay, said I sounded distracted last time we spoke. "And?" I asked carefully. "And I realized," she said, meeting my eyes, "that I am." The truth of it hung between us. I can handle discomfort. What I can't handle is dishonesty. My heart pounded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she replied slowly, "that we're standing in a moment that's asking for clarity." I swallowed. "And if clarity causes damage, then pretending won't prevent it," she said gently. She wasn't pressuring me, she was offering me agency, and that made everything harder. The night it almost happened wasn't dramatic. No storm, no confessions, no impulsive mistakes, just exhaustion. My friend had gone to bed early. I stayed up, scrolling aimlessly, trying to quiet my thoughts. She came into the living room quietly, wrapped in a cardigan, eyes tired. "Can't sleep?" she asked. No. She sat across from me, careful to keep space between us. I've been thinking, she said. So have I. She nodded. That's the problem. We sat there, the television playing something neither of us was watching. I need to ask you something. Okay? If I weren't her mother, would this feel different to you? She continued, voice steady but tight. The question landed heavy. Yes, I admitted. She closed her eyes briefly, like she'd expected that. And if I weren't your friend's daughter's mother, she asked, quietly. Yes, she said quietly, answering for herself. The honesty in the room was almost unbearable. She stood abruptly. This is a mistake. The words cut, not because they were wrong, but because they were necessary. I agree, I said, forcing myself to stand too. We faced each other, closer now than we'd ever been, the tension undeniable. Then we need boundaries, she said. Yes. Real ones. Yes. She hesitated, then extended her hand, not to touch me, but to create distance. This ends here, she said. I nodded, chest aching. It has to. We held each other's gaze for a long moment. Not longing, not regret, something heavier. Acceptance. She turned away first. That should have been the end, but endings are rarely that clean. Because boundaries don't erase feelings, they test them. And the real danger wasn't what we felt in private, it was what we'd have to face when the truth started pressing in from the outside. The boundary didn't bring peace. It brought tension with structure. We became polite again, efficient, predictable. The kind of normal that fools outsiders and exhausts the people living inside it. She spoke to me only when necessary. I answered without embellishment. We moved around each other like carefully drawn lines. My friend noticed immediately. Not dramatically, not suspiciously, just intuitively. She asked why I'd been staying out later, why her mother suddenly preferred early mornings, why conversations stopped when she entered the room. You two feel distant, she said one night, curled up on the couch beside me. Did I do something? No, I said quickly, too quickly. She studied me, not convinced. You'd tell me, right? Yes, I said, and hated myself for how easily the word came. The lie didn't sit heavy, it sat hollow. The pressure built quietly. Her mother started spending more time away from the house, longer errands, unnecessary meetings. The distance was intentional, not avoidance, but containment. I tried to mirror it. I applied harder, networked, made plans to leave sooner than expected, told myself that removal would fix what restraint couldn't. But removal doesn't heal unresolved things. It only relocates them. The fracture arrived on a Sunday afternoon. My friend came home early, unexpectedly, to find her mother in the kitchen, hands shaking as she poured coffee she wouldn't drink. "What's wrong?" she asked. I froze in the doorway. Her mother hesitated. That pause said more than any confession ever could. "I'm tired," she said carefully. "That's not it," my friend replied. The air tightened. I felt something shift, not between us, but around us, like a truth pressing against the walls, demanding to be acknowledged. My friend turned to me. "Is something going on that I don't know about?" The room went very still. Her mother spoke first. "No." I said nothing. The silence between those answers was deafening. My friend laughed, not amused, not angry, unsettled. "You didn't even say the same thing," she said. Her mother closed her eyes. That was the moment restraint stopped protecting anyone. Later that night, her mother knocked on my door. Once. Soft. Controlled. "I need to talk," she said. We stood on opposite sides of the threshold like the space itself mattered. "She knows something's wrong," she said quietly. "I know. She deserves honesty." I agree. Her eyes searched mine. "Then we need to decide what that honesty looks like." My chest tightened. There isn't a version of this that doesn't hurt her. Her voice softened, not with fear, but with resolve. There is a version that doesn't insult her intelligence. I let that settle. You're leaving, she continued. Soon. Yes. Good, she said. That matters. Why? Because endings are easier to explain than contradictions. The logic was brutal, effective. And after? I asked. She didn't answer right away. I don't know, she said honestly, but I know this can't remain undefined. The confrontation came the next morning. My friend didn't wait for permission. She demanded truth. She sat at the table, arms crossed, jaw set, no longer curious, no longer gentle. Either tell me what's happening or tell me why you won't. Her mother took a breath, steady, deliberate. There's been an emotional boundary crossed, she said. My friend blinked. Between who? Her mother didn't look at me, but she didn't need to. My friend turned slowly. Her eyes met mine. Understanding didn't arrive all at once. It assembled itself, piece by piece, from memories, instincts, things she'd dismissed as coincidence. Her expression didn't explode. It collapsed. Are you serious? She whispered. No one answered. That silence was the confirmation. She stood abruptly. You're leaving, she said to me. I nodded. I already planned to. She laughed bitterly. How considerate. Her mother spoke carefully. This wasn't planned. That makes it worse, my friend snapped. She looked between us, anger, betrayal, disbelief warring in her expression. How long? She asked. Her mother answered before I could, long enough to realize it couldn't continue. My friend swallowed hard. So you felt something, she said, not accusing, clarifying. Her mother nodded once. My friend exhaled sharply. And you, she said to me, you just let it happen? No, I said quietly. I fought it. Her laugh was sharp. Congratulations. She turned away, pacing. You're both adults, I get that, but I trusted you. That was the deepest cut. Not the attraction, not the tension, the trust. She left the house that afternoon, didn't say where she was going, didn't say when she'd be back. The house felt emptier than it ever had. Her mother sat at the table long after, staring at nothing. I never wanted to hurt her, she said. I know. That doesn't absolve anything. No, I agreed. She looked at me then, really looked. This ends with you leaving, she said. Yes. And with me staying, she added. Yes. The clarity was painful, necessary. You didn't ruin anything, she said quietly, but you did reveal something. I nodded. I didn't mean to. I believe you, she replied. That doesn't mean it doesn't matter. The night before I left, I packed slowly. Her mother didn't come to say goodbye. She didn't need to. The house held enough of that already. I understood then that this story was never about indulgence. It was about recognition and the cost of choosing restraint too late. Some connections aren't meant to be acted on, but they still change you. And the hardest part wasn't letting go of her. It was accepting that some truths arrive only to teach you what you cannot keep. Leaving didn't feel dramatic. No last looks through the window, no rushed confessions, no promises that would have turned memory into regret. I packed early, quietly, like someone who didn't want to wake the house or the past. My friend still hadn't come home. Her absence felt heavier than anger would have. Her mother was already awake. She stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched, wearing the same calm expression she always did, except now it felt earned instead of guarded. You don't have to leave this early, she said. I do, I replied. It makes things simpler. She nodded. Sometimes simplicity is kindness. We stood there, facing each other for the last time in that space. No tension, no longing, just two people acknowledging something that had passed without being consumed by it. I want you to know, she said, carefully, this didn't undo my life. I know, I answered. It changed mine, though. Her eyes softened, not with regret, but recognition. "That's how you know it mattered," she said. I picked up my bag. "Take care of yourself," she added. "I will." And that was it. The city felt louder when I returned, sharper, faster, less forgiving. I moved into a small studio with thin walls and a window that looked directly into someone else's kitchen. I started a new job that didn't ask too much of me emotionally, which felt like mercy at first and emptiness later. For a while, everything reminded me of that summer. Not her specifically, but what I'd learned while being near her. That desire doesn't always demand action. That boundaries can exist without denial. That longing can be honest without being indulgent. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped framing the experience as a mistake. Instead, I treated it like a mirror, one that showed me the parts of myself I'd been avoiding. My need for steadiness, my fear of disrupting lives, my tendency to stay silent instead of choosing clarity early. Those weren't flaws, they were patterns, and patterns can be changed. Months passed. My friend eventually called. Not to yell, not to interrogate, to talk. We met at a cafe halfway between our lives now, neutral territory. She looked older, not worn, just more defined. "I was angry," she said without preamble. "Then I wasn't. Then I was again." "I understand," I replied. She stirred her coffee. "I don't hate either of you." Relief washed through me, not dramatic, just grounding. "But I needed distance from both of you," she continued. "I get that." She looked up. "I don't think you planned it." "No." I don't think she did either. Silence settled, gentler this time. "You leaving helped," she admitted. "It gave me space to sort out what was mine to carry and what wasn't. I never wanted to come between you." "I know," she said. "That's why this hurt." We didn't rebuild everything that day, but we didn't end it either. Sometimes healing is just agreeing to continue, carefully. I didn't see her mother again. Not in person, but I carried her with me in quieter ways, in how I learned to pause before speaking, in how I respected emotional gravity instead of running from it, in how I stopped treating attraction as something to conquer or suppress, and started treating it as information. The next relationship I entered wasn't dramatic. It was gentle. She was closer to my age, open in ways I hadn't known I needed. She asked questions I was finally able to answer honestly. I didn't compare them. I didn't need to, because what I'd felt that summer wasn't a template. It was a lesson. One evening, nearly a year later, I found myself walking through a park just as the sun dipped low, that familiar warmth brushing my skin, and for the first time, I didn't feel pulled backward. I felt rooted. Some loves are meant to be lived. Others are meant to be understood. That summer had been the latter. Not a secret obsession, not a betrayal, but a moment that taught me restraint isn't weakness, and desire doesn't always need a future to have meaning. What stayed wasn't her. What stayed was clarity, and that turned out to be enough.